Before we start our face mount, I'll need some images to work with, and I've printed some off on my Roland VS540i. It's configured with silver metallic ink, and these prints are absolutely stunning to look at. So if you're going to do a face mount where your image is going to be flush to the edges, you'll want to set the print up so that you have a 1/4 inch bleed all the way around. I'll take my acrylic sheet, place it on top of the image so that you can see this 1/4 inch bleed all the way around the image, or about 6 millimeters. If you have a client that brings you a print that's actual size, or you print one that's actual size, you may want to consider doing what's called a float mount. In our first example of a face mount, I'm actually going to be working with a sled. A sled's a tool that you use if you want to do small images and you're not interested in webbing up the laminator, or you want to over-laminate just one side of an image. To create my sled, I use a piece of 3 millimeter or 1/8 thick acrylic. I've covered the entire sheet with a mounting adhesive, and I've left the release liner in place. This is going to provide a non-stick surface, which is very important when you're working with the sled. One unique point is I've actually stripped back 1 inch both the release liner and the mounting adhesive to expose the clear acrylic here on the leading edge. And this is going to be real helpful as we move forward. Our first step is to attach the face mount to the sled on this leading edge that we'll process through the laminator to create a hinge like this. This is normally done by taking a small piece of tape and attaching it to the upper release liner and separating it from the face mount adhesive. This is sticky, this is not. Next, most people will work this leading edge all the way across and turn the sheet over. However, this is a little bit difficult for some people, and I'd like to show you an easier way. The easiest way to create a hinge with face mount on a sled is to leave that 1 inch area of exposed acrylic. Put a little air underneath your face mount and slide it up till it meets that 1 inch strip. Now, I normally use some clear heavy-duty packing tape, but for the video I'm going to use some brown because it's going to be easier to see. Tape your tape past the board. Line it up on the other side, put a little tension in this way, rub it down with your thumb. I'm going to use a paint scraper and actually just cut the tape off. And I'm leaving it about a 1/2 inch beyond the face mount. I'll take my squeegee and rub this down, and I'll flip the sheet over. Take my squeegee, rub it down one more time. Now I have a piece of gray electrical tape that I'm actually going to attach to the release liner, and with just a little gentle pull, I'm actually going to lift up, and I'll feel to make sure that I'm just pulling off the release liner, and with a nice even pull all the way across, we can separate the release liner. I'll turn my tape over and tape it down, push the face mount back onto the sled, and we're ready to go to the laminator. Before we pass our sled through the JM63 to apply our face mount to our image, there's a couple of things we'll need to do. Clean our rollers off and go over a couple of settings. I've got the machine powered on, and I've got the heat set to 109 degrees Fahrenheit. This is about 42, 43 degrees Celsius. I've got the laminator set to a forward mode and a comfortable speed set. Now let's take a look at an easy way to clean off our rollers. I'm going to use the DRS roller and the adhesive tacky pad to get any dirt or dust that's on the rollers. I'll simply spin the top roller and move the DRS roller across from the left to the right. I'll cut to an up-close shot so you can actually see the particles being picked up by the roller. And then I'll just transfer them to the adhesive tacky pad. I've set a gap, the distance between the top roller and the bottom roller, to 3 millimeters, which corresponds to the thickness of our sled. I'm going to take the leading edge and place it into the rollers, and then I'm going to use the foot switch to drive the sled into the laminator, and I'll stop just past the hinge point here. Our next step is pretty straightforward. We need to take our face mount and pass it over the top main roller. But we want to make sure that we get a nice tight wrap. Failure to do so can end up with bubbles in the leading edge of your digital print. I'd like to take this moment to tell you that if you have a print that's really long, it's a nice idea to take your face mount and wrap it around a 3-inch plastic tube. This gives you an incredible way to control a wide web of film, and it makes it easier to pass it over the roller, and you won't kink your film. So what I'm going to do is actually pull back and up and get a nice tight wrap, and then I can pull my tube out. The next thing I want to do is I want to pass the face mount underneath the idler here. And that's because I'm actually going to use this tube as my wind-up, attaching my electrical tape to the tube. So when we start to process this board through the laminator, this will actually wind up and separate our release liner. Cleaning off your digital print or your photograph before you do a face mount is absolutely critical. Any small dirt or dust or particles on the sheet will only be amplified when you do a face mount. I like to take my flashlight and run it across my image like this. This will cast shadows on any small dust particles that are on the sheet, making them far easier to see. Here's what that looks like up close. Now, some people will actually use air to blow off the image, and I got to tell you, I'm not interested in moving the dust from here to there or creating a dust storm. Some people will actually use a microfiber cloth and clean off the image like this. Unfortunately, if there's any dust or dirt underneath your microfiber cloth, you can actually scratch the image. And chances are you're just moving the dirt or dust from here to here. The best way to clean off your digital print is to use the DRS roller. Go from the bottom to the top. Use overlapping strokes. Make sure not to touch your digital print with your fingers. Doing so will only make them show up after a period of time. With our print clean, we can place it onto our sled, and we can now process it through the laminator. I'm going to hold down the leading edge and use the foot switch to start the leading edge of the print into the laminator. You'll notice here that the release liner is being taken up by our tube. All I'm doing is putting a little downward pressure here to make sure that the tube makes contact with the roller. What I like about this is I can stop my tube from turning for just a moment and lower the separation point. The lower it is, the better. Now, if I want, I can always reach over and put the machine in the auto run mode and speed up. And again, I'm maintaining a constant separation point all the way across the web. This is really helpful when you have an extra long print. Right after your print exits the laminator, it's a good idea to remove the packing tape that we use to attach the face mount to the sled. Remember, we left it a little bit long. That makes it easy to grab this point right here and pull it off. Now we're ready to trim out our print. But before you start cutting out your print, take it off of your sled. Cutting prints on your sled is just going to shorten its life, and it'll last a long time if you take care of it. We want to cut out our print exactly on the bleed. We're going to trim it out on the bottom, along this edge, right on top of the bleed. We'll also cut this side and this side. However, I want to make sure to trim off just the face mount along this top edge here and leave this 4 inches of unprinted media, about 10 centimeters. This area will be used to create our hinge.